And it's time now for First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. Join us for the next hour and get into the game. First and 45, identifying social determinants contributing to the homicide epidemic killing black males before the age of 45. It's First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. And good evening, Coach. How you doing on this evening?
Hey, Fred. Bishop? How you doing today?
I am doing well. Glad to be back with you tonight.
Oh yeah. You've been on. Thought you was looking for a new NIL or something. Trying to find that you in this transfer portal.
Listen, I'm just glad to be in the land of the living, and just glad to be back safe.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate. Would you open us up with a word of prayer? We're glad to have you back.
Absolutely, God. We are grateful for life itself, for the opportunity to come together, and as this platform has been set aside to equip and empower our listeners and viewers for the greater good of serving the community in an effort to save our black boys' lives. So bless our time, word our mouths, God, and you make the difference. Get all the glory. Let us reign in your victory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Bishop. I wanted to get started today. Our guy, Pastor Drew, is going to be out a minute, and he's not going to be with us tonight. And so I really want to take this opportunity to really even zero in even more so on this homicide epidemic and looking at solutions. Sunday at church, I had the opportunity to speak a little bit about this, and I was just, and I know it's a time of politics and things are going on in our world, but I think this is not a political issue. I mean, this is a moral issue, and politics, are part of our society in each and every way. But regardless, when you look at the crisis that we're facing in our community, in one of the most blessed countries in the world, it's really disheartening, and to me sometimes quite confusing, being that I've served in combat in third world areas and visit third world countries on behalf of missions, and understanding our young people sometimes have no idea what opportunities they have because of the situation that they're born into. And I always liken that back to the reference of Harriet Tubman when she said that liberating people born into slavery was a difficult thing to do because they had never experienced freedom. And if you can just imagine that paradigm in a person's mind, that all you've ever known was to be an object, to be, a slave. You never thought about the person that God created you to be. You were born into a situation that you were deceived in many ways, thinking this is what God meant for you to be, and there's a lot of variables in that. And I'm not here to discuss the historic alignments of history, but what I want to talk about tonight is a critical thinking paradigms that are associated with the social determinants contributing to the black male homicide epidemic, and this is a very heavy situation. It's weighing on my heart because each and every day that we do nothing, it gets expensive. Looking at the crisis that we faced in Little Rock, the fact that in Little Rock over the last end of 22 into all of 23, that we had 47 juveniles charged as adults for violent crimes in Little Rock. 47. Of those 47, the reason we do First and 45, 46 of them were African American. So in our life, in today, we are very intentional about to make sure everybody's inclusive. And I think what we have to do to solve this crisis, we have to be exclusive. And Dean Northcross, he says it all the time, is that nobody can fix this but from what the community is coming from. Because outside of the community, the solution is for it has been to arrest more people, build more prisons, and not look toward solutions. So not only we've been working with juveniles, we're trying to do a pilot as well for adults, rehabilitating adults to be credible messengers who many people don't want to go back into those communities that they once, you remember Turtle talks about,
Yeah.
the culprits of the community.
Right.
Because they're scared of it. But unless you grew up in that and you understood that environment, you're not intimidated. I liken it to the special forces. Everybody don't want to sign up. If you go into the army,
Right.
everybody not want to put their life on the line and go and get bin Laden, and do those missions. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take those type of, working dually. It's going to take, those type of programming to take people like that. When you take these young people in juvenile detention centers, which the data tells us that 85% of those young people will reoffend if they're not rehabilitated with college, a mentor specifically to change their lives. And that's not happening in our country. And that's why we continue to build prisons, because if we didn't, you would cut off the head of it, and you wouldn't have to do that.
That's why the importance of us saving our sons, like Dr. Deputy Northcross always talk about, because the system is geared to repeat.
No question.
Itself.
That's it. And that's why the paradigm, the mindset. I was in court today, and with the gentleman, and my heart grieves because he told me as they put the handcuffs on him, he told me that I've never had anybody. Brian Miller brought him to me. He said, I've never been around a positive group of men before in my life that gave me a positive vision. He was born into the situation, okay, to no fault of his own. At 16, all right, committing violent crimes throughout the city of Little Rock, and he has to pay, But understanding his situation and the moral erosion of our society that's tied into sin is what has to be addressed in our society if we're going to ever do that. What I did, I built a element of thought incorporated by First and 45, basically Save Our Sons initiative. And in that, I came up with a purpose, questions at issue, data analysis, literature review, interpretation and inference, concepts, theories, definition, laws, and principles, assumptions, implication, and consequences, and my own personal point of view. Now, what I'm going to do this hour in that is talk through this for people to understand why this has to be a critical thinking process, that we have to be very strategic. And it's kind of like winning a game. If we're going to do it, okay, in the process, here's the game plan. Fitz, coach, why are you doing this? The first thing that we're trying to do is to identify and target the 2% population, which the data suggests will be responsible for the majority of violent behavior in Little Rock, in Arkansas, and the nation over the next 10 years. We're just focused on this. So understanding what's creating that population. That's so important to understand. So now you go back and look. That's what we do in the public health issue. That's what we do with cancer. That's how we started tracking COVID to understand where did it come from. So I'm saying, if we have the technology,
and we spent quality time doing
it because of life.
Yeah.
So now, Bishop, understanding this has, let me share, and I get confused sometimes because I'm always talking about this. I know everybody gets tired of hearing me talk about it. But it's because it's always on my mind. And so when
It's some data. I know it's some data.
it is. But check this out right here on this data right here. When it's talking about, I want you to see the college. This is how it has impacted us as a group, and I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, but check this out. We have, and I think I said this last week, but this is the ecosystem that's been fractured, and I did say it last week. But we only have 78,888 black men enrolled in college at historically black colleges, the lowest that it's been since 1976. We have 138,539 black women enrolled in HBCUs. That's almost 2-to-1. So what I'm saying, this goes back to the issue of the ecosystem in our community being fractured. All right. Well, you know who, in my mind, you know who's suffering for that more than anything? The NBA, the NFL, and our homes. Because in order to play in NFL, unlike the NBA, you have to go to college. Mm-hmm. All right? But you're not going to college, in which then the data says only 5% of African American males who enroll in college commit a crime. So what's the paradigm? What are we talking about in order to do that? Well, we have to start identifying the individuals and what's causing the social determinants that's leading to this epidemic. And let's identify what's creating this population. And that's what we're going to do. I know it's time to go into break already, but hey, stay, because we're going to come back. That's the purpose of First and 45. See, we just not out here. That's the purpose, to identify this population, because we identify, we can do something about it. But, ignorance is bliss. If you don't know what you're doing, then you don't even think about solving it. But we're going to give you the facts tonight on the game plan to get in the game with us in your own space and solve this problem, and contribute to this crisis so we can decrease the homicide rate of black males and young men dying before the age of 44. Hey, stay tuned. This is Coach Fitz and Bishop Fred. We'll be right back.
That it would be easy, but he promised never to leave me. He's right here by my side. Oh, the Lord, he's a very great guide. Anything I want and need, he will supply it for me.
Here, and for the last 11 years, we've worked together to build the Arkansas Dream Center. And over those years, things have grown, opportunities have happened, but we've continued to focus on that mission of every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And for that very reason, our corporation is actually known as Every Arkansan Inc. We have two ministries that really work together in tandem to see that mission take place. We have the Arkansas Dream Center, which is going out and we're reaching out to the communities. We're in those communities with mobile trucks. We're doing after school, we're feeding, we're doing all those things you know us for doing. But in addition, we realize that the church is the answer to a lot of society's problems, and there's one on every corner. So we have City Serve that comes along the side of the church, and they provide the resources. They provide furniture and clothing and diapers and all these things to the local churches so they can reach out to their neighbors. And together, when those two start to mesh, we're going out and we're bringing the churches alongside of them, and we're equipping and we're resourcing those churches. We can truly empower the local church with the resources they need to strengthen relationships in their communities. And that's what our vision is for Every Arkansan Inc. And we're so glad you're a part of it.
And we're back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. Coach, you were talking about not only the loss of our black men, our young people, but the numbers in college going down and have went down so far until the female population is just almost over double.
So So you have to go back and just think about how that impacts our communities. All right, so do you realize how many black men are in prison and how many black men in college? Okay, and so what I'm saying, as you back into this, Bishop, the data says only 5%. And see, this is what I realized, only 5% of black males who graduated high school and enrolled in college were involved in criminal activity when the study took place. But here's the issue. Most of the young men committing crimes have dropped out of school. As Turtle always tells us, when he got his Fed charge, he was suspended. All right. So I'm saying if truly we're going to try to build safer communities, we have to address these social determinants that are leading to this violent behavior. Listen, a kid is not born. My daughter just texted me. Okay. I just had my third grandson. She just gave birth today. All right.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, that's right. So she's so excited. Now let me. I'm going to explain what has happened. So we thought she was going into labor on Sunday. So after church, I immediately went to Texarkana to be with. She had started her contractions, but she didn't. And so it just happened today. All right. But in that environment, what I've seen, they're at her house. Mm-hmm. It's my grandmother. Is her grandmother. All right. Her mother, her mother-in-law, her auntie, with a support system now that my grandson,
family village.
I'm sitting there saying, let them walk. My boys, mother, they don't need to be picked up. I got these, but it's a support system there. But the presence that I'm trying to show is from a male. Because her dad just got home today, flew in from Europe playing basketball, and the support system to know, okay, this is the ecosystem that God built, and so having that support system, as God intended for it to, is how our young people develop, without any psychosis or without any challenges, and so in this situation. Unlike what we often hear with the teenage pregnancy, kids not getting what they need, environment not supportive, multiple children, not a support system, all the things that we see are linked to sin. All right? And what I'm saying is to no fault of the child, but the child suffers because of it.
Right.
So the second thing, when I say questions at issue, is over the next 6 months. Not only have we identified the 2% population, because remember, in America, 2% of the population is responsible for 56% of the homicides.
2% of the population is responsible for 50%?
56%. So here's what I'm telling you. If, and this is why it's a crisis, if homicide in the United States of America would decrease by half if this permanent underclass, which I'm saying is coming out of this social, off these social determinants, had a vaccine, had some type of remedy, some type of medicine, some type of programming that we said, okay, this is what we're going to do for teenage mothers, We're not going to listen because we already know the science. Mm-hmm. Remember, a black male born to a teenage mother in poverty upon conception has a 50% chance of going to prison. All right? The kid, when the sperm hit the egg in that deal, that child, because of his social environment, unlike my grandson, all right, just because of where he's born, the zip code,
right.
All right, the support system that he has, all right, it's everything's changed. So why do we keep allowing these types of environments to be created, which normally comes from underserved, poor, children raising children? And Bishop, did you understand now that
absentee fathers,
yeah. all the criteria that's there, and we're not discussing this. This should be, in my estimation. Now let's and I'm not running for office, so I'm not looking for an approval rating. But why is this not the moral climate talked about? Because this is what's killing our communities on Sundays. Well, I mean, when I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about how many young people, we're just talking about death. I'm talking about bad decisions because the crime. So, of those 47 kids in Little Rock, 46 of those kids, 44 of them look like you and me, and there was 2 young black females. Okay? So, do you see the disparity in the ethnicity of that group? So we have to have a specific camp. We don't need to be in, the homicide rates that we're talking about, that's 98% of the population.
And we target the problem, and we don't target a real solution.
No. Here, I'm likening it to cancer. Okay, listen. My dad died of stomach cancer. My brother, they didn't know it was all over him. But when my dad was treated, okay, and as I look out and talk to many people today who going through the carotid treatment, you don't treat the whole body when you go into cancer.
Treat the problem.
You treat the problem because if you treat the whole body, you kill the good cancer cells as well.
Yeah.
So you go in, they took 85% of my dad's stomach out because the stomach will stretch itself because it was full of cancer and thought they had it all. Okay, so they said, we're going to remove this because we think we have this cancerous deal and this deal right here. Okay, so they did, and then they gave him treatment in the areas to see if they could help, but they didn't go in and remove his lung. It was his stomach because it was full of cancer. Well, if I'm sitting here telling you that in Little Rock or Pine Bluff, where the crime problem is, without addressing the social determinants causing it, what have we fixed?
Yeah.
So all we're doing, look, what did Nelson Mandela say? We just out here pulling people out the river. We ain't looking who threw them in.
Yeah.
So that's one reason I ended up leaving Arkansas Baptist, is because I realized that I couldn't really be a solution because I was rehabilitating kids in that venue, even though we were helping, but all we were doing was really accommodating and trying to rehabilitate in that vein. But these kids had been through so much. When Derek was murdered on campus, the next day, when we called everybody into a service to pray for our campus, for our community. And I'll never forget this, as I was up speaking. And I said, everybody in here who knows somebody in your community that has been murdered, a family member, close friend, please stand. 90% of the campus community stood up. Now, I didn't say died. I say murdered.
There's a difference.
There's a difference. And so that's going back into determine which social determinants are key factors responsible for the homicide epidemic of black males ages 1 to 19, as well as the overrepresentation of black males responsible for the pipeline to prison crisis. So when you go back and look and see, on average, okay, when a black male is murdered, 2 to 3 other black males will be sentenced, and 65% of them will be prosecuted. That's what's leading to this social crisis, and that's why that number is disproportionate to males and females in college, because our boys are not graduating high school, and they're going to prison. And what the prison is now the prison is a place they want you to get your education. So now you can go to prison and get an education, because now they're going to rehabilitate you and model you. So the prison is its own institution now. So what they want you to have is a job skill to keep the prison running. Because now the prison is business where it's manufacturing things for people outside the communities. So now the prison's a business that if we got a person in prison that can do the education, that's good. Well, if you listen, if you in there for 50 years, then 40 years, you gonna get educated, but you getting educated for a reason.
And you're going to get educated on something that's not even going to be applicable.
I mean, you,
50 years later.
You
Half of it or more.
you stand in, and the technology is there, and those type of things are being involved. But the system is that your life has been changed forever
Right.
by a decision that you made that was created by the social determinants in your life. So, and this is what the data analysis and literature review is what we start looking at, how we look at gun violence and homicide trends in Little Rock and Pine Bluff as we look at the two most dangerous cities. And the thing about it is you look at this in the Delta as well, you still see you see that in high impoverished areas, Helena, West Helena. Go look and you can see how that correlates with a teenage pregnancy. And as we go into break, I want you to think about this. What are the 3 states? I'm just going to ask you, I've said this before, if you remember, I'm going to see you in my class, I'm going to see if you're paying attention, I'm going to have to put you in remedial studies here. But what are the 3 highest teenage pregnancy states? Just take a guess.
Chicago.
That's a city, that's a states.
Well, Illinois.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to tell you as we go into
Missouri?
Nope.
Okay. Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Oh, yeah, I remember now. Okay.
Number 1,
Yeah.
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Louisiana.
Is it Louisiana?
Yep,
Okay.
Number
All right.
3. Now I want you to think about that. All right.
And that's all in the.
That's the rule. That's it.
Wow.
Teenage pregnancy. Now go and look at the crime. All right, in Jackson, Mississippi, Little Rock, Arkansas. Okay, Pine Bluff, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Shreveport. Look at that. How the crime is tied to the teenage pregnancy,
Social determinants.
which are creating the social determinants. That the light that has to be shined to that crisis, Bishop, is from the church. The black church has to lead in that initiative, as they did the civil rights movement, because this is denying our kids for an opportunity to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Stay with us. We'll be back for the second half.
Our instructions that we must follow to a T in all.
Many different problems, so many different issues. Homicide rate, high incarceration rate, fatherless homes. What is America going to do about it?
What are we going to do about it? Yeah, what are we going to do about it? When I say we, I'm talking to black men. I'm asking us, what are we going to do about issues that negatively impact black men and boys to a greater degree than other demographics? Everybody knows about the homicide epidemic in this country regarding black men and boys. While comprising only 6% of the nation's population, will account for 50% of the nation's homicide victims. So what are we going to do about it? Here's another disturbing reality. While making up only 6% of the nation's population, we're about 40% of the nation's prison population. In fact, 1 in 3 black males are projected to go to jail in their lifetime. Again, I ask, what are we going to do about it? Collectively, black men have the means to solve these problems. We just don't have the mind to do so. And means without the mind is meaningless. Brother, it doesn't mean a thing.
I want to be.
No more dying. Heaven's a place where there'll be no more crying.
And we're back with First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill. Coach, Deputy Northcross, just hearing him say, what are we going to do about it? There's a responsibility in each one of us, but especially those of us who are parents and uncles and aunts of our black boys.
Yeah. We have to have a special strategy to address these social determinants that are creating, are turning our neighborhoods into hoods.
And when you lose one life, And then you often talk about this. You talk about the numbers.
The homicide grenade.
The homicide grenade. Talk about that impact, because one life does not just equal one life.
No. And what you see in many cases, the death. I mean, the deaths. The wounded are oftentimes more traumatic than the deaths, because the wounded is always 3 to 1. So remember, last year if we had 10,000 black males murdered, we had 30. We would have, the numbers say you have 30,000 wounded. It costs more to treat a wounded person than it does a dead person. That's the shrapnel effect of the grenade. And it was really interesting. That only hit home with me, Bishop, when I was working with Coach Charles Ripley. And he'd had a stroke. And I went to get a scooter for him or something to get around for his disability. And the person at the store where I was getting the medical equipment referenced our show and what we were doing, because it said she listened and stuff. And she said, you're onto something what you're saying. She said, because you ain't realize how many times a person is shot in the back, can't walk anymore, person is now confined to a wheelchair, all these things. So they had to come here. And so now you're talking about the quality of life. So now the disability, all those things are then played on society because of this social determinants that have taken place that's led to this violent communities in many places, and the zip codes for where it takes place. And so, see, if it was spreading like COVID did, there was action. But what you can see in many cases, the majority of the homicide in the United States of America takes place in 127 cities. So I'm going to South Dakota this weekend to see my son play. You ever hear any crime in South Dakota? North Dakota? And I'm sure it happens, but I'm saying to the level of what we're talking about to create these epidemics, which we have within our community. And we as a community, we cannot sit on the sidelines and think the government is going to fix it. Listen, the government didn't fix the civil rights movement. It was the movement of the church, Dr. King and the civil rights leaders, that led to equality. So now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Prayer was the common.
It was a moral.
Yeah.
It was a moral action.
Yeah.
It was that we said this is right. Okay, you can't mistreat us. I mean, it was a moral movement that said, what is right or wrong and different, or whether you want to believe in the movement or not, to say that, my grandmother, who Miss Rosie Park, could sit wherever she wants to, and all those type of things, and how that was a catalyst for us to stand. People don't realize, and that's why, in churches and in vacation Bible school and church conferences, when I grew up, it was so important to understand why the movement of sacrifice in curing our communities is so important. Because when you start thinking about Miss Rosie Parks and the sacrifice, they were responding to a wrong to our people, all right? That we were second-class citizens, and we were not going to take that, all right? So in doing that, they boycotted. And so by the boycott is the reason that they allow you and I to sit where we wanted to. It changed the laws. But to do that, the sacrifice was that they decided they're going to walk, okay? So it had to be a sacrifice. If we as a black community had not unified, and half of them rode and some of them didn't, it never would have dismantled the inequalities associated with race. This wasn't human, it was race. So I'm saying we got to reverse that for ourselves. look at this situation from within and says, how can we change this from within? And I call it, that was the civil rights movement. This has to be a civil responsibility movement, where we have to be responsible for ourselves and unify ourselves to save ourselves. Do you realize in our communities today, at one point, we were the largest minority population in the United States of America. Now the Hispanic population has passed us, and when you're in prison, not reproducing, okay, all the things that go along with the social freedom of choices, all these things. Now, when we were rapidly in this as a second, I mean, how many votes have we lost because of the crime rate? How many people you can't vote because you're a felon? All these things that we have disenfranchised ourselves in, Bishop, is tied to the morality of our choices.
That's the foundation.
That's the foundation.
Yeah.
Which, think about this. You realize in 1949, only 19% of black children were born outside of wedlock. Okay? So that means if there was 10 black babies being born, only 1.9, so nine were born to two-parent home before 1950. So now let's think about that. From coming out of slavery, if any time, it's like from a psychological standpoint, you know, when I looked at Django the other day, when I started looking at how you don't know how to function, slavery is psychosis on the brain,
Right.
because you don't know anything else. So you're thinking that you're an object. But if you think about from 1865 to 1960, the progress that was made within our communities, do you realize it wasn't a black male epidemic then? Why? Why? I mean, these are the things, these are the interpretations and inference that I'm saying that will help us. Our solution is in our previous history,
Right.
which is then creates a specific action plan to save our sons from the social determinants responsible for producing the homicide epidemic of young black men. We already have the answer. We did that from 1865 to 1970. You know when the black male epidemic started? In the 70s. The CDC reported. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you know what happened, and then the welfare, all the programs to break down the family structure is the unit God intended, and you cannot repair it any other way. You know, and even in situations that you and I have experienced, we still have an obligation to our families.
Right.
First and foremost, to your children, to your grandchildren. That's what God calls us to do. And so, you know, in the second, as we sit here and think about the concept, theories, definition, laws, and principles, it's so important that we understand what's the next movement that we need to move forward, understanding the history of how from slavery with nothing, that Black Wall Street was built in Tulsa. Do you think the government did that?
Absolutely not.
You think Jim Crow did that? No. The unified community of working together did that. All right? You realize $1 today?
Somebody said, what are we going to do about it?
Huh?
And we done something.
And we
about it.
done something about it. We got together. We didn't go over there. We wasn't up in Greenwood, Oklahoma, and say, well, let's go down here to the courthouse and see what they're going to give us.
Right.
Because listen, they would have said, hey, think about it. If you asked somebody in Greenwood down there, well, let's go down to the courthouse and see, you know.
What program?
What program? Think about that, Bishop. See if they're going to give us a food stamp
Right.
to eat. No. That's how we started to become the best farmers out there.
Yeah.
That's how we become the best, you know, ICE providers a job. But as a community, you realize $1 stays in the Asian community 28 days. $1 stays in Jewish community 16 days. You know how long $1 stays in the African American community?
I know it went down. How many minutes?
6 hours.
6 hours. Okay.
You know how long it stayed in Greenwood before it left? 4 years.
4 years. Wow.
So that means that money. So what you're doing, you're building an economic system.
Invested in each other.
Invest in each other.
Yeah.
All right. Today, Asian community. That's how it's going. Jewish community is doing the business. You know how many businesses? Now I don't know the number, but I know prior to 2016, there were only 4 open. There were only 4 African American business that remained open in Little Rock that were open prior to integration. Only 4. Which speaks to when integration took place, our dollars also left the community, which then de-empowered the black entrepreneur, which then are reasons that our neighborhoods have become hoods. And so that's so important that we understand the financial implications of creating the social determinants and why people call it the hood and all the other social factors. If you was going to ask me what right now, from a psychological standpoint, what's one of the most critical things, and we talked about it several times, but you have to continue to talk about it because it's such a detrimental impact to our kids is our music. I cannot emphasize enough how that is killing the minds of our young people. If that when I see
music have the spirits and the spirits transfer.
No question.
Yeah.
I mean, for the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
When I see a 7-8-year-old girl doing the WAP, and being encouraged, and I'm understanding the how that's already being implied in her mind. What those
at a young age,
and then young boys being inspired by it. It's a challenge. But as we get ready to go in the break, when we come back, we're going to talk about concept, theories, definition, laws, and principles of the elements of thoughts by First and 45. Then we're going to move into assumptions and implication and consequences. If you please stay with us as we go into the fourth quarter of First and 45 with Coach Fitz. I know this has been a different, but after what I saw today, understanding we must address these issues for our pipeline to prison and the growing business of the funeral homes within our communities. We'll be back for the fourth quarter.
And for the last 11 years, we've worked together to build the Arkansas Dream Center. And over those years, things have grown, opportunities have happened, but we've continued to focus on that mission of every Arkansan chasing their God-given dream. And for that very reason, our corporation is actually known as Every Arkansan Inc. We have 2 ministries that really work together in tandem to see that mission take place. We have the Arkansas Dream Center, which is going out and we're reaching out to the communities. We're in those communities with mobile trucks. We're doing after school, we're feeding, we're doing all those things you know us for doing. But in addition, we realize that the church is the answer to a lot of society's problems, and there's one on every corner. So we have City Serve that comes along the side of the church, and they provide the resources. They provide furniture and clothing and diapers and all these things to the local churches so they can reach out to their neighbors. And together, when those 2 start to mesh, we're going out and we're bringing the churches alongside of them, and we're equipping and we're resourcing those churches. We can truly empower the local church with the resources they need to strengthen relationships in their communities. And that's what our vision is for Every Arkansan Inc. And we're so glad you're a part of it.
You get the glory.
And we're back with First and 45, our final quarter, the fourth quarter here with First and 45 with Coach Fitzhill and
mercy every day of my life.
Pastor Drew is not with us on the night. He'll be back with us on the next week. But Coach, what we got on this in this last quarter?
Bishop, what I want to be able to do, because we're always talking about solutions and how we're tying these solutions and strategic planning into this. I turned 60 years old a few months ago, and I said, it's a 10-year plan that has to be integrated. I liken this to being in combat, air, land, and sea. You have to fight on all venues. That's called what's called the theater. All right, so in the theater of war, you have to fight. You have to control the air, the land, and the sea, because you can get wiped out on the flank, and so it's constant. So we what in America, we've been boldly reactive in just controlling the prison population, not what's creating the prison population. Right. People talk about the pipeline to prison, but they're not looking at what's creating the pipeline to prison. So our whole deal is that I'm going to get a nonprofit, and I'm going to work with these people to keep them from going to prison, or I'm going to get a nonprofit, and I'm going to work with these people coming out of prison. Well, what would happen if we, just like we don't, with cancer, they try to tell you what not, rather than just keep smoking and then come back and see me, when you get lung cancer, and then we'll treat you. That's not why Cartide was built. Now, if people did the things and genetically were able to overcome some of the problems, you probably wouldn't need a Cartide. But because of the growth in cancer over the last several years, when my father had it, my brother, well, they didn't have these specific type of facilities, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying, if in fact this epidemic, all right, cancer was killing. When you go back and look right now, the number one cause of death for black males aged 1 to 44 is homicide. Okay, from 45 to 64 is heart disease. From 65 on up is cancer. Okay, so I'm saying the greatest risk for our boys is homicide, and if we want more people to get to 45, we would create these special Cartide type of social oriented organizations that's looking at what's creating this epidemic. So what I've done, created from targeted goals and objectives. Excuse me. I've been talking so much this whole time, y'all. I'm solo today, but I don't know, my guy here, Bishop's helping me a little bit. But we're going to look at prevention, okay, early detection, rehabilitation, and intensive treatment while retained. So that's how we look at this. So you looking at this as juveniles, okay? Because understanding we can cut the head off if we can get from 1 to 19, and understanding if we're able to align our strategic planning in with 1 to 19, from birth to 19, that will be fewer kids going to prison out of this population. If we impact this in 10 years, do you realize the 2% of the population that's responsible for 56% of the homicide has decreased? And listen, think about it like this. Being on the state board, okay? One child, when you start looking, the numbers are not incredibly large in rural states like Arkansas. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm sitting here, I tell you, of the 47 juveniles charged as adults last year, what if we had impacted those 47 with specific alignment? Because I can tell you with a great degree of certainty, all right, I can profile those kids for you almost to the T. All right, and profile, like I said, and people won't talk about, and I have to ask this is a hard question when people say, well, you're stereotyping. I said, here's a question I said, tell me the definition of stereotyping. All right, I said, in fact, can you look up stereotyping for me on Google while I'm talking? Look up stereotyping. All right, and I want you to read that. And I did this to a gentleman in class. I'm teaching the class, and we're talking about the economic benefits the economic benefits of crime, and then somebody said, well, aren't you stereotyping? Okay, you got it? I just want you to read that to our people to see what it says. So when it pops up.
So it says widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. Yeah.
Okay. So oversimplified idea. All right. Now, so we're saying that it could or could not be true, but you have a fixation of the brain. Okay. All right. So here's my point. Is it a stereotype, though, if it's true? Is it a stereotype?
Not if it's true.
Okay. It's the facts.
Right.
And so what I'm saying, you base that mindset off these facts. So I'm saying here are the things that we work to create based on the probabilities of what's going to happen to this population. So I can go here and tell you right now, okay, how this population is created and how you do this from prevention. You target a teenage mother that has a child, she falls into that category of high risk because 50% of all prison inmates, based on statistics, are born to a teenage mother in poverty. You already know. That's what the data says. Okay? Do you know what the next data says? So this is prevention. Mm-hmm. All right. That's prevention.
Okay.
We're gonna keep, and these are I'm just simplifying these as we're in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
You know what early detection is? You know what the next thing it says?
What's that?
You are 85% likely to be in juvenile detention as a teenager if you're suspended from elementary school. Statistics. Numbers don't lie. And what? Together what?
They tell a story.
They tell a story. Yeah. So I'm saying that's not a stereotype. All right. So if I see a kid in second, third, fourth grade that has multiple suspensions, mm-hmm. the writing is on the wall for him on the juvenile pipeline to prison sentence, unless he has an incredible support system that's trying to rehabilitate and work with him. Because here's the deal. Mm-hmm. You're suspending that kid back to an environment that resulted in him needing to be suspended. Being at school is probably the only break away from that environment that's going to change him. Right. You're feeding him 2 meals a day. You're giving him breakfast and lunch, and if he's in a social program after school, he's getting fed there. Whereas he doesn't get that when he's home. I went to a school, I'm not going to call the name, while I was on state board. They suspended a kid. All right? The kid got arrested when he came back. He came back to school. You know what he came back for? Lunch. So I
arrested him.
And I'm on campus. I said, wait a minute. Give him a sack lunch and let him go home.
Right.
But you're arrested for trespassing. And I said, now this kid is in the system so I'm saying he's hungry.
He was in a system that set him up for failure.
Because right now that number is saying,
yeah.
All right, so look, I'm hungry. At least I think I'm coming to a place where I can eat.
Yeah. But not only that, he got suspended, all right, and the very fact that he came back to the school said that where you sent him back, there wasn't food, which meant that the social determinants that led to the problem in the first place.
And I sit there and I just look at that.
Yeah.
And so now here's what we do. We take that young man, and he's in the system for trespassing because he was suspended. And I'm sitting there and saying, well, wait a minute. Bring him in here. I want to talk to him. Hey, man, you see what you're doing? I mean, come on. Jesus, you in the church. Bishop, you run a church. If you got a member that come in there that's acting up, you're not going to say, just get out of here.
Yeah.
Just get out of here. And then I know we're getting ready to close, but we will wrap this up in the second half as we go into prevention, early detection, rehabilitation, and intensive treatment while being detained, because these measurable goals and concepts can be strategically implementing in the planning process, which we'll talk about. Hey, thank you for being here with us tonight. Pastor Drew will be back with us next week as we continue to look at critical thinking paradigms to address the social determinants contributing to the black male homicide epidemic. Pastor, will you close out word of prayer?
God, we are praying for our nation. We pray for our cities and communities. We pray for mothers who are grieving and fathers who have lost their children. We lift up one another in your great name, Jesus. Thank God and amen.